welcome to the third episode of hashtag Hear Her Story, the WAG's International Day of Girl podcast. I am Anjali, and this podcast is originally recorded in French with our guest speaker and then translated into Arabic, English, and Spanish by translation teams. This podcast has been developed to complement the hashtag Write Her Story, the WAG's activity pack for the International Day of Girl 2021. This activity pack takes you through finding the cause you care about, planning an advocacy project, and then delivering it. Remember to keep listening at the end of the podcast, where we will set you a social media challenge relating to the activity pack. We are really looking forward to see what you have to send us. A little tip in carrying out a project we found useful is to set a good goal at the start and then share responsibilities as well as collaborate with colleagues. And during implementation, we found that if you follow up on the same activities, you might also see progress that might be useful. Do you share the same opinions as us? And do you have any other tips and advice on this topic? Share them on social networks with the hashtag #HearHerStory.
In this third episode, we are pleased to welcome Marine from YWCA Canada. Hello, Marine, and thank you for accepting our invitation to talk about your advocacy journey. Can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you and what is your role within the YWCA Association?
Hello, everyone. My name is Marine. I am 23 years old and I'm a university student. I live in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So, regarding my career, I started my journey of engagement from a young people in advocacy at a very young age, with social implications in many different causes for different organizations within my neighborhood. That's why I discovered the YWCA through a program called Strength of Girls, Strength of the World. It was at this program where I met young feminists and we trained together precisely on feminism, and we had to help each other organize the International Women's Day project or even an event. So we decided to do this project that underlined the accomplishment of women who inspire us. For example, we made a little documentary where we interviewed inspiring women of Montreal, and they explained their journey. We even created an open mind event and all that. After that, I got involved nationally with the YWCA Canada events. So it took place every year, and it's kind of a weekend type camp or even an engagement type camp where the participants attended workshops or conferences that kind of focused on engagement that included advocacy, women in politics, and many subjects similar to that. Then I had the chance to work for the YWCA during the COVID-19 period and work specifically on the Women Feminist Economic Recovery Plan. Then with the YWCA Canada, but in partnership with the other youth organizations across Canada, was working on the issue of employment and therefore young people who lose their jobs on questions, how are we going to recover the economy by including young people after the COVID-19?
Thank you very much for your answer. It's really informative. It's really very interesting as well. And my second question is that, can you tell us a bit more about the Feminist Economic Recovery Plan?
So that was just a big project my colleagues and I worked on during the COVID-19 with the YWCA Canada. The purpose of the program was to provide an article of recommendations for the government. We worked more on the youth aspect of the plan where we were young women, so this is really important. But it's the YWCA who produced and published the first economic recovery plan for women. In the world, if I'm not mistaken, we are the first country that have created the plan with Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken. And in this plan, there are various recommendations of articles for the government to precisely take into consideration the contribution of women and the various challenges they may experience. And we, in our youth team, have been divided into 4 teams to work on 4 main issues, including gender-based violence, accommodation with the housing crisis, because there were people who were homeless. There were also economic of care that concerns of people who work in social service, such as public service, nurses, etc. Often women work for free to take care of others, so it concerns precisely certain families or women who have security at the economic level. So teams covered these up, and our role was to do more research, to do literacy reviews of what was already there, and to do an environmental scan of what was being done in other countries that works well and or works less well, so that we can be inspired with their practices or method of recommendation.
Yes, I think it's interesting and it's a very good initiative for us as a young person, and especially as a young person like you, Marine. Thank you for sharing with us this. But how did you start the advocacy journey?
In several instances, I have been confronted with this, doing advocacy through different organizations at the YWCA, the Carrefour International, or the YWCA. I think it started when I was in high school. The YMCA had organized a youth engagement summit, and it was a weekend because there were lots of kids around 7 to 12 years old. So lots of young adolescents gathered at this camp. It was an open air camp in nature, and young people were there to attend conferences, debate on social economic issues, political issues, or even other issues that are fundamentally topical, which may not be necessarily talked about at school, which allows us to learn about what's happening more around the world and to know the action that should be done, and even know the solutions to meet a lot of those motivated, inspiring people. I think that is really the root of my commitment. I returned there several times. I even had the chance to organize it. It was a bit of a trigger into my career as a young woman to get involved. So after that, I started to get more involved in organizations within my neighborhood and to advocate for climate cause and then for the cause of gender equality.
So basically, you advocate for these two causes, right?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, it's really clear why it was important to you to advocate for these two causes. Can you share us why you choose these two themes to focus? Why are these two causes important to you?
I find that these two causes are linked because climate justice, climate change, in fact, will have consequences often on most vulnerable populations. Often, people who cause a lot of pollution are not necessarily the ones who suffer the most serious consequences. It's often the third world countries that are poor. We also see the consequences are even more serious at the level of countries that are poor, and we also see the consequences within children, the elderly, and the vulnerable people, the most vulnerable people of the world. The companies, in fact, are the ones who most suffer the least from these consequences of climate change, when they are not the main emitters or cause of the climate change. As you can see, the effects of change with all the heat waves and the wildfires in Australia, even the floods. So it turns out that it's important precisely to do education awareness about how we can do it as an individual to reduce our ecological footprint and what we can do to put pressure on the government to adopt more environmentally friendly policies. Regarding gender equality as a woman, as a young woman to be precise, I think it's important to fight for our rights to have more equality, more representation. In fact, I think especially at a political level, for example, even in Canada, we have 25% of the members of parliament that are women, sorry, and only 3/4 are men. So things are progressing little by little, but I find there's still a lot of lack of representation of women, and not only women, but also, for example, indigenous people, women for diverse backgrounds. So we want to see more diversity, more diverse representation in political bodies, whether at municipal, provincial, or even the federal level. That's why I get involved, to inspire other women to take up more space. And now it is together that we will make change.
It is very clear. Thank you. I remember that earlier you also said that you have started to organize your own advocacy projects.
Yeah, the media newspaper, but it doesn't belong to me. It's really a great team effort. I got involved in projects that are already underway.
And an economic recovery plan for women apart from doing research. Did you also have any other role besides that? Or have you really focused on researching what's going on all over the world and all that is information gathering?
For the economic recovery plan for women, I was able to participate in a Zoom interview. It was more like an event open to the public to talk about what we can do to make a recovery more inclusive to women and young women. What should companies hire millennials and millennial women? So it was an opportunity to bring our voice to businesses, corporations, whether public or private, and community organizations too. There was an event too, a kind of youth summit, because there were a lot of youth business organizations from all over Canada, because each organization could present their work that they had done. And it was also an opportunity then for them to present their work further contribute to our research. And as such, I believe that all research that we did could also influence the Feminist Economic Recovery Plan or the work of the YWCA Canada to make recommendations. Another thing that I did, but it was not with the YWCA. I participated in a Youth Summit of Canada. It is another. In fact, there were a lot of summits. It is a bit confusing, but it was a summit organized by the Prime Minister of Canada, and there were over 300 and even a few young people from all over Canada. And I remember they were kind of petitioned to stand up in front of the Prime Minister when he came to make his speech. Me and other young women stood up to defend the climate crisis and showed the government lack of action of climate change. We laid down in front of the Prime Minister, pretending to be dead, to show his lack of action skills. So this is somewhat extreme, but it's a direct example, being in front of the Prime Minister to advocate precisely for climate change.
Moving on to the next question, talking about his advocacy projects. You can tell us how you made your plan in this case, who helped you with advocacy work.
In fact, that's the Youth Economic Recovery Plan, and that's really the whole organization that had done it. And each young person had a different section and a different contribution to this big initiative. The research stage is very important. This stage enables us to see what is already being done in the field and even understand issues, and also what are we talking about. What is being said about, for example, gender-based violence. I was in the gender-based violence team, so we were able to document the issues in Canada and other countries, see what policies were already existing in relation and how we could better improve them. What is missing? We realized there was really a lack of information and research for people from diverse backgrounds. So there were a few things that were missing, like research on identities that were a minority in society. For a Black woman, she experienced challenges because she was Black, because she was a woman of society. So things like that. And after doing research, it was sent precisely to the YWCA and then to the Canadian Council for the success of young women and young people. It was really them who oversaw the Youth Economic Recovery Plan, despite the fact that we were still taking care of the feminist gender part. And then they were able to write a plan with specific recommendations to help companies or governments understand why it's important to include young people and especially young women in the political decision of economic recovery.
Yes, it is clear. This is good. And during this work, can you tell us what obstacles you encountered during this process? That is, from planning to completion of your advocacy project, and how did you overcome them?
That's a good question. With the obstacles, I will say maybe in the research sometimes it was a bit difficult to find what we were going on in powerful countries, in other countries, another country like Japan, because we don't speak Japanese or we don't write Japanese. So it's sometimes difficult to find things that are translated into French or English, especially when it comes to the government. So it took a little bit of time to find reliable sources for research projects in relation to the literacy review and the environmental scan of various issues, which we had to do research, but there was one who had a brilliant idea of doing Google Translate. For example, I found a document and then we translated it, but it was a challenge because they were all working on Zoom. We're teleworking and in addition, teleschools. So we were always in meetings or on Zoom or doing research, and it was working on the computer. I was on my computer for 10 hours a day during the COVID-19. It was really difficult mentally and physically. Other than that, the realization of the plan and everything was fine. I don't think we had too much of a problem. We communicated well with each other. We had our small WhatsApp group where we communicated.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You're really right about telework fatigue and all. You always have to adapt. My next question is pretty straightforward. What is your favorite?
My favorite cookie. It would actually be maybe, I don't know, maybe chocolate chip cookies. This is delicious.
My next question to you is: do you have any questions for the girls in our movement?
Maybe, how are you girls going to be involved in International Day of the Girl?
Dear listener, answer Marine's question on social media with the hashtag #HearHerStory. My next question is: what advice would you give to our young members who seek to become active in an advocacy role?
So, my advice would be do your research. You have to know the issue you're focusing on. Network because networking is very important. Connect with people who are already engaged, who inspire you, and go and ask them questions. Do not hesitate to find maybe mentors or people already involved in the community so that they can guide you. Look at their journey because anyone can get involved if there is a cause that is close to your heart. I will tell you to go ahead and also think about inclusion. So always try to think about who are usually excluded from public places or political bodies and find ways to include them in the work you do.
Great advice, Marine. I would like to thank you for sharing with us experience, and we are convinced that many of our members will be inspired and will begin to conduct their advocacy project. Thank you so much, Marine, for agreeing to participate in this podcast. We especially want to thank you for your collaboration and help for the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, girls. It was fun. Thank you and good luck to you.
As you work through the third section of the activity pack, you will plan your advocacy project using a number of tools to work out how you are going to make a change. We would like you to use a minimum to deliver a mini project, something that you would like to take a couple of weeks, maybe to complete. But if you're feeling inspired, there are additional tools designed to help you further keep your project going. Throughout the advocacy project, you may come across a number of challenges from people not responding to you to people contradicting what you're trying to achieve. Can you share with us on social media your top tips for getting past blockers or experiences that you have had, and how have you overcome them? Remember to tag us at WAGS World and hashtag #HearHerStory. We look forward to meeting you again in the next episode, where we will be hearing from Sophie, an advocate who was part of the Girl Guiding UK's campaign to end period poverty.
To me, advocacy is about giving people who are underrepresented a voice. I see my job as an advocate being twofold. So firstly, it's so important to listen, and then after you listen, you need to make noise. And I think it's so important to keep in mind when you're representing specific groups, especially marginalised groups, not to take up their space. So to represent in a way that empowers people to do the same, instead of representing in a way where you're never pulling anyone else up with you.
Finally, we would like to take a minute to thank the amazing team behind this podcast, including our volunteer team of Camilla, Mariam, Barbara, Mercedes, Mino, Fehri Zoro, and Anjali, and the WAG staff, especially Elsa and Maria, and the music from bensound.com.